After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the meaning of zero-based budgeting, in short known as ZBB, learn salient features of ZBB, know the various steps involved in zero-based budgeting, understand the merits and demerits of ZBB, and elaborate the concept of rolling budget. The budgeting process classically begins with a strategic planning session by senior management. The management team then puts on the agreed strategic direction to a sequence of plans that roll up into a master budget. The plans contain a sales budget, a production budget, and a direct materials budget, a direct labor budget, manufacturing overheads budget, sales and administrative budget, and fixed assets budget. All of these strategies roll up into master budget, which comprises a budgeted income statement, balance sheet, and cash forecast. All these strategies roll up into a master budget, which comprises a budgeted income statement, a balance sheet, and cash forecast. There may also be a financing budget in which is enumerated the debt and equity arrangement needed to confirm that the cash necessities of the budget can be met. Budgeting has come to be established as well-organized method of short-term planning and control. It is employed, no doubt, in large business houses, but even the small businesses are using it, at least in some informal ways. Through the budgets, a business wants to know, obviously, as to what it proposes to do during an accounting period or a part thereof. The method of budgeting is an important presentation of management accounting. Probably the ultimate aid to good administration that has ever been devised is the use of budgets and budgetary control. It is a multi-purpose tool and has helped directors to cope up with many problems, including inflation. Zero-based budgeting is one of the methods of budgeting which is discussed in detail in this part of the text. Let us begin our discussion by understanding the meaning of zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is a new technique of budgeting. It is designed to meet the needs of the management in order to ensure the operational efficiency and effective utilization of the allocated resources of a concern. This technique was formally developed by Peter A. Fir, and manager of Texas Instrument during 1969. This concept is extensively used in USA for controlling their state expenditure when Mr. Jimmy Carter was the president of the country. At present, the technique has for its global recognition for many countries have implemented in real terms. According to Peter A. Fir, ZBB is defined as an operative planning and budgeting process which requires each manager to justify his entire budget in detail from scratch, hence zero base, and shift the burden of proof to each manager to justify why we should spend any money at all. Zero-based budgeting is the latest modus operandi of budgeting. A budget is a representation of quantification of the firm's objectives. An accurate budget can be framed when a relationship between the inputs and outputs can be established. In all the activities, such relationship cannot be established. In such areas, it is difficult to develop standard costs. Where it is difficult to compare the resources allocation with the output, ZBB is more appropriate in controlling. The term zero-based budgeting means starting from the scratch or starting from the beginning. The zero-based budgeting justification of expenditure is to be made for the past as well as new projects. In the traditional budgeting, the figures of the previous years are taken as a base and additions are made for the current year. But in zero-based budgeting, even the running projects are to be justified for continuation. If the past projects were allowed to continue, without justification, the past inefficiencies would continue automatically. So, the manager has to justify why he wants to continue to spend. In ZBB, the manager has to justify the essentiality of the new projects for their starting and continuation of previous projects every year. Equally, the concerned manager has to justify the amount of spending thereon is reasonable or not. Let us now discuss the salient features of zero-based budgeting. Number 1. Manager of a decision unit has to completely justify why there should be at all any budget allotment for his decision unit. This justification is to be made afresh without making reference to previous level of spending in his department. 2. Activities are identified in decision packages. 3. Decision packages are ranked in order of priority. 4. Packages are evaluated by systematic analysis. 5. Under this approach, there exists a frank relationship between superiors and subordinates. Management agrees to fund for a specified service and manager of the decision unit clearly accepts to deliver the service. 6. Decision packages are linked with corporate objectives which are clearly laid down. 7. And lastly, available resources are directed towards alternatives in order of priority to ensure optimum results. Let us now learn the steps for preparation of zero-based budgeting. Number 1. Determining the objectives. Determination of objectives is the first step. The objective can be cost reduction in staff overheads or dropping those projects that do not fit in the organizational objectives or focus. 2. Extent of coverage. It relates to decisions where zero-based budgeting is to be introduced in all areas of certain select area on trial basis. 3. Developing decision units. Decision units can be a functional department, a program, a product line or subline. Each decision unit must be independent. Then only they come under consideration. Cost benefit analysis is to be done to the decision unit. Decision is to be taken whether the units are to be continued or dropped. If the cost benefit analysis is favorable, the decision unit can be implemented, otherwise it can be dropped or discontinued. Benefit should be more as compared to the cost. Cost benefit analysis is the foundation of zero BB, which helps in ranking the projects. If the decision unit is dropped, no further thinking is required or needed about those activities. 4. Developing decision packages. This is the most important step involved in ZBB process. After decision for selection of units, the concerned manager of activity is given the freedom to come out with the alternatives to achieve. He does the cost benefit analysis and selects the best course of action or best alternative. He summarizes the plans and resources required to be achieved. 5. Preparation of budgets. This is the last stage involved in zero-based budgeting process. One of the top management has ranked the various decisions packages keeping in view the cost benefit analysis and availability of funds. A cutoff point is established. All packages, programs, products, etc., which come within the cutoff points are accepted and others are rejected. The resources are then allocated to the different decision units and budgets relating to units are approved. Zero-based budgeting is an extension of cost-benefit analysis method to the area of corporate budgeting. Let us now understand the various merits of zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is a revolutionary concept. The benefits are: number 1, proper allocation of funds. Funds are scarce. Priority in allocation of funds is made on the basis of cost-benefit analysis. 2. Systematic evaluation. Manager has to justify the demand for resources every year, so it provides the organization a systematic way to evaluate different programs and operations undertaken. So, for the ongoing projects too, review is made every year. Funds allocation for the ongoing projects is made if there is a justification to continue further. In other words, there is no difference between the new projects and ongoing projects from the viewpoint of allocation of funds. 3. Linking budgets with goals of the enterprise. Those projects that do not fit within the overall goals of the organization are not continued, even if they were commenced. Goal-oriented approach of the enterprise would be developed. 4. Zero-based approach. Zero is taken as the base every time. Only those activities and programs that are essential are undertaken, which improve the overall efficiency of the enterprise. Alternative courses of action are always studied. Economics are achieved, eliminating wastages. The focus of the management is on analysis and decision making. 5. Optimum use of resources. As cost benefit analysis is the guiding principle in fixing priorities, resources are used to the optimum advantage of the organization. 6. No incremental approach. Normally, budgets are based on incremental approach. The usual feature of functional heads is to seek information from the accounts department of the previous year's expenditure, add something for the current year and try to justify the increase. This incremental approach is not possible with zero-based budgeting. Manager has to justify their activities and funds requested. 7. Most appropriate for non-manufacturing areas. Zero-based budgeting is very appropriate for the staff and support areas, that is non-manufacturing areas. In these areas, the output of these areas is not directly related with the final output of the organization. Within the business world, ZBB can be applied to research and development, data processing, quality control, marketing and transportation, legal staff and personnel office. Let us understand this with the help of an example. A separate training department may remain in an organization. The utility of the continuation of the department may be studied in comparison to conducting training outside the organization. Training is a non-manufacturing area and its discontinuation with the organization and providing diverse types of training to the staff outside the firm may be more ideally be suitable while reducing the costs of the enterprise. Let us turn our focus towards the demerits of zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is not devoid of limitations. Number 1. Computation of cost-benefit analysis is essential for ZBB. This is not possible in respect of non-financial matters. 2. The system of ZBB has no scope to adjust for changes, so ZBB has no scope in flexible budgeting. 3. ZBB involves lot of time and cost of operating is also very high. 4. Formulation of decision package is a difficult process and all the managers may not have the necessary expertise. 5. Forced to justify every detail relating to expenditure, the R&D department is threatened whereas the production department benefits. 6. In large organizations, the volume of forms may be so large that no one person could read it all. Compressing the information down to a usable size might remove critically important details. 7. Honesty of the managers must be reliable and uniform. Any manager that exaggerates skews the results. 8th and lastly, necessary to train managers. Zero-based budgeting must be clearly understood by managers at various levels to be successfully implemented. Let us now understand what is meant by the term rolling budget. A rolling budget is a budget that is continually updated to add a new budget period as the most recent budget period is completed. Thus, the rolling budget involves the incremental extension of existing budget model. A rolling budget calls for considerably more management attention than it is the case when a company produces a one-year static budget, since some budgeting activities must now be repeated every month. In addition, if a company uses participative budgeting to create its budgets on a rolling basis, the total employee time used over the course of a year is substantial. Consequently, it is best to adopt a leaner approach to a rolling budget with fewer people involved in the process. For example, ABC company has adopted a 12-month budget planning horizon and its initial budget is from January to December. After a month passes, the January period is complete. So it is now added a budget for the following January so that it still has a 12-month planning horizon that now extends from February of the current year to January of the next year. A rolling budget is also described as a continuous budgeting. For years, organizations have relied upon creating annual budgets to plan for upcoming fiscal year. Today, many organizations with annual budgets are feeling their ability to react to changes in marketplace is restricted. While annual budgets used to be a vital piece of financial process for almost every company, more and more businesses are replacing their annual budgets with a rolling budget forecast. An annual budget is designed to provide an organization with a roadmap of where their company is headed for the next 12 months. By creating priorities across the entire organization, a budget helps a business decide which projects and initiatives are worth pursuing in the coming year and which are not. However, opponents will argue that this process locks departments into committing to certain initiatives which may or may not continue to be valuable as the fiscal year progresses. The business environment has been notoriously turbulent in the past several years, and annual budgets make it harder for the organizations to adapt to changes in the marketplace. In addition, The budgeting process is often just a process. Many businesses spend up to 6 months creating a budget to plan for next 12 months. But the budget is outdated as soon as it is finalized. Many have noted that researching new markets and prioritizing initiatives should happen on a continuous basis. An organization's fiscal structure needs to reflect this. Much like budgeting, a rolling forecast attempts to predict future environment. Predicting the future is always difficult, and thus the main purpose of a rolling forecast is not to get the predictions exactly right, but to provide an organization leaders with the information they need to make decisions. Seasoned managers and executives may be better at predicting markets as compared to others, but forecasting will almost never be 100% accurate. However, by having a forecasting model in place, an organization is structured to receive information and adapt something that is tougher to do operationally under an annual budget. It is clear that having a rolling forecast allows an organization to be much more responsive to the business environment and adapt accordingly. Yet, forecasted numbers will arguably be less biased than budgeting numbers. When an organization sets a budget, department goals and budgeting numbers can often be one and the same. Sales managers set targets for their team, or the production line sets waste goals, and these figures are used to plan the budget. Forecasted numbers are not tied to performance, and organizations can still have targets to reach, while the metrics used in rolling forecasting can remain separate, resulting in a more accurate prediction of future operations. Let us understand the various advantages of rolling budget. Number 1, they reduce uncertainty in budgeting, which is important in highly volatile industries where sales levels and prices may fluctuate. 2, managers need to reassess the budgets frequently. 3, more realistic budgets will aid motivation. 4, planning and control will always be based upon up-to-date information, which covers a significant period into future. 5, and lastly, planning and control will be based on a recent plan which is likely to be far more realistic than a fixed annual budget made many months ago. Knowing the other side of the coin, the disadvantages of rolling budget are: number 1, it is time consuming. 2, managers may find the constant revision of budgets disruptive and unsettling. 3, continuous updating may not be justified where the changes are not continuous. 4, revisions to the budget might involve revisions to standard costs too, which in turn would involve revisions to stock valuations. This could replace a large administrative effort from the accounts department every time a rolling budget is prepared. 5, and lastly, it is costly for the organization as special management power is required. Let us recapitulate what we have learnt in this module. Zero-based budgeting is an important technique of budgeting tool for the future planning and control. Zero-based comprises many advantages like proper allocation of funds, systematic evaluation and efficient utilization of funds, but it also has some disadvantages like computation of cost-benefit analysis is essential. It has no scope as it is not flexible budgeting, and requirement of trained staff for proper execution of plans is needed. Similarly, rolling budgets, also the budget which incorporates the new budget period as recent period is complete, but a rolling budget calls for considerably more management attention than in the case when a company produces a 1-year static budget.